And Alican joins me now in the studio. Alican, why is everybody so keen on Antarctica?
Well, it's a truly amazing place, and it all depends on who you are, and that will give you the answer why you're there. If you're a scientist in the field of climate science or a researcher wanting to find answers on how man-made pollutants make their way to the bottom of the Earth, posing a threat to the region's delicate ecosystem, then there's no better place than Antarctica. It's ground zero. It's the belly of the beast. A quick example in terms of climate science, most of our planet's fresh water is in Antarctica, solid state. But if that melts, that could lead to a significant rise in sea level, and that could pose a great threat to cities that are located in coastal communities. So, and it's a domino effect. So what happens there has the potential to affect the rest of the world. Now, if you're going there as a tourist, which you can, you're probably going there to admire the magnificent glaciers and icebergs and sort of admire the adorable wildlife, whether it's penguins, seals, or birds. And if you're lucky, humpback whales. So we as journalists, we as filmmakers, were extremely lucky because we got to experience both sides of it by following the scientists and actually filming these animals.
And you didn't have to pay for it.
There you go.
But for those who look at the different nations getting involved now, is it a scramble for the Antarctic? Is there something that these countries want out of the place?
Well, definitely. But in terms of a scramble, yes and no. You have these traditional powerhouses like the US's, the Russia's, the France's, the UK's, and they've had a significant presence on the white continent since the late 1950s on the pretense that all activity is sort of based on science and peace. But there are territorial disputes. When we were on the Antarctic Peninsula, that's claimed by 3 countries, Chile, Argentina, and the UK. Another example, sort of in the late 80s during the time of General Pinochet, the Chileans actually set up this town, Villa las Estrellas, City of the Stars. Today it has its own post office, its school, its church, even its airstrip. So these are all moves to actually bolster countries' territorial claims in Antarctica.
Yeah, and usually, I'm not going to ask you why, but usually, studies are focused up top at the Arctic and not down bottom. So this is fascinating that you went and you give us some insight into what's going on down at the bottom. I'm fascinated. I'm just curious. I mean, for you, telling the story, going through this long journey, spending all the time there, not having access to the internet, I guess, for most of the time. What was it like?
It wasn't easy. It had its moments where I asked myself, why am I here? I want to go home, but obviously don't have that that option. But especially both physically and emotionally, there were very tough times. For me, crossing the Drake Passage was probably one of the most difficult moments. It's one of the most treacherous stretches of water. 8 to 9 meter waves, winds howling at nearly 200 kilometers an hour. It was definitely not my finest hour or finest day. I rarely left the confines of my bunk bed, sticking to a strict regimen of Dramamine to sort of overcome the seasickness. But in terms of physical conditions, the cold wasn't that tough, to tell you the truth. We only saw about minus 15 degrees, which is not too bad. But it was the wind and the ice that actually posed the most difficult parts in terms of doing our jobs.
We live in Istanbul. It's noisy. There are a lot of distractions. We travel to places where things are happening, when news is happening. You're chasing things happening. Things are either, I don't know, on the bad end of the spectrum, blowing up, or things are happening in terms of politicians doing things, dramatic things happening. You went to a very quiet place and you had to tell a story. How does that work?
Well, like you said, it's the complete opposite end of the spectrum. But there you're at the mercy of weather conditions. We were staying on a boat, so a lot of the time it was Mother Nature that dictated whether we could go out and actually do our jobs. But once we were on the White Continent, my God, you could see the visibility was amazing. You could see for tens of kilometers. You could hear things. I felt that I had superpowers. So it was very different to come out of a sort of a chaotic lifestyle, or controlled chaotic lifestyle that we have not only in Istanbul, but as journalists in general, but to go there and to experience something on the opposite end of the spectrum was truly unique.
Alican Ayanlar, great to talk to you. Good to get that insight into Antarctica. I don't know anybody else who's been to Antarctica except for you and Jonjo. So.
Well, I don't know anybody who's been to North Korea, so.
There we go. We're even. And that's all for this edition of The Newsmakers with me, Imran Garda. You can check out more of our stories on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Remember to like, follow and subscribe. Next time, we uncover the extent of Venezuela's health crisis as thousands go without medical care. Is it just the president who's responsible, or are sanctions also to blame? Until then, thank you for watching. Bye-bye.